Give unobtrusive exposition, that is to advance the story, to give the audience the information it needs to understand the story and to care about what happens in the story. That skill, to give that exposition in a way that doesn't call attention to itself, in a way that doesn't stop the story in its tracks, in a way that doesn't seem to be preachy or didactic, that's one of the major challenges of screenwriting, and that's really what maybe your primary goal in learning to write screenplays.
Exposition, that's the curse of writing. I've never met a writer who loved to do exposition. And I've always envied one writer. There was one picture with Val Talbot, and it opened practically verbatim this way. He walks on the screen, and somebody said to Val Talbot, "Ma, you look wonderful." And he said, "Of course I look wonderful." He says, 7 years of laying pipeline in Saudi Arabia after my wife left me and the house burned down and the children had the croup. He says, and I went into bankruptcy and I fought my way back. Does make a man look fit." I said, "Oh, it's terrible, but it was out of the way."
And a very nice thing I think has happened in the past 10, 12 years, maybe more, which is that the audience has gotten to need less exposition. Audiences have gotten, I think, in some degrees, in some ways, smarter. They don't, when I first came into the movies, all of the, producers and directors that you worked with said, "Well, be sure they understand that. I mean, oh, that's a little, that isn't quite clear there. We better clear this up." As you know from seeing movies today, now we may have gone a little too far. Nobody bothers to clear much up at all. I rather like the tendency, which is that you don't patronize the audience. You figure if you do your job well and you have a well-constructed piece, the audience is going to fill in a lot for you.
Are there any techniques you could recommend for writing subtle and fluid exposition?
I found the best way to fill in an audience on plot and story and necessary information was to do it in conflict. Have two characters arguing with each other, and in the course of the argument, letting the audience know what the story is about, what the backstory is about.
One of the most straightforward exposition scenes that I've written and directed happens in Body Heat, where the woman has manipulated the leading character into murdering her husband, and she has been doing some of her own sort of dirty work in the background, has manipulated the will of her husband against the desire of her cohort, this hero. He doesn't know it, but after the death of her husband, he's called to a meeting in an attorney's office in which we have to find out, the audience didn't know either, that she was up to this behind his back. And so a third character begins to tell the story of what happened to the will that she has changed, unbeknownst to our hero, who has been our eyes in the story up till then. We know what he knows. We don't know anything he doesn't know. So it's very explicit exposition in the scene. But what makes it palatable, I think, is that the audience is sharing the hero's surprise at that moment.
And I think a writer devotes more time to exposition than he does to any other phase of a movie. Now, in Casablanca, we did it gradually with a series of conversations, and mainly the series of conversation between Bogart and Claude Rains. Where did you come from and what were you for? And there was a conversation later on when Major Strasser came in, who was Conrad Veidt, and asked him questions about it. And so we did it gradually. But I prefer to to get it out of the way as quickly as possible. And once it's out of the way, every writer breathes a great sigh of relief.
What about the use of such techniques as voiceover narration and the flashback?
Use of flashback is, I think, always will be an effective thing when it's well done. The film has movies have an odd kind of approach to time. They can, in a way, everything is accepted in film. We accept that time jumps in film. You don't really mind that the scene that follows by a split second is clearly a year later. It's 2 years later. You see that things have changed. They're in a different place. The guy who a few seconds ago had no beard now has a beard. The child has grown older. We don't question it at all. By the same token, if you then flash back in time into the next scene, you see that child young, and we know that that's supposed to be the same child. The audience has absolutely no problem with that in film. It's probably the most fluid of the arts that way.
I was told, and it's true, I think mainly that about flashbacks, that flashbacks are a sign of weakness. You could say the same about narration. Now, there's an example I understand of a classic picture, Tom Jones, Adventures of Tom Jones. When the picture was finished, I understand, everybody thought they had the biggest flop of all time. It just didn't make sense until somebody in the crew or an electrician or somebody said, why don't we put narration in to fill in the parts that are not clear? And they did that and they had a big hit. You do it as a last resort. Flashbacks are a last resort. Now, we had a flashback in Casablanca because there was a lot of backstory. We wish we could have done without it, but I don't think it hurt too much because you were looking at Ingrid Bergman and that always helped.
You know how I gathered and destroyed every single item in Germany and Poland that might have served as a clue to my identity? Well, guess what I'll be doing at 6 o'clock tonight? Standing before a minister of the gospel with a woman's hand in mine, the daughter of a justice of the United States Supreme Court, a famous liberal. The girl's even good to look at. Yes, the camouflage is perfect. Who would think to look for the notorious Franz Kindler in the sacred precincts of the Harper School, surrounded by the sons of America's first families? And I'll stay hidden till the day when we strike again.
One of the most important decisions a writer must make is when to begin the story. This point of attack also applies to each scene within the script. When I used to teach creative writing, I would tell the students to make their characters want something right away, even if it's only a glass of water. Characters paralyzed by the meaninglessness of modern life still have to drink water from time to time.
Out the deadwood. Okay.
Look, Mr. Cannell, I just can't afford to be without work right now, not even for a day. I've got a mother and 2 kid sisters.
More good luck telegrams.
Well, you know how it is. I've just got to keep on working, see?
How do you determine the starting point of your script?
Where to start the story is, of course, one of the major problems, because starting is the hardest thing to do as a writer. In terms of film, I think the place to start is at the first moment of impact, the first moment of conflict. To start as quickly as you can to get right to the heart of what's going on.
Don't waste any time. Start with the problem. Start with the hero's problem. What is it he wants? Why? Who's preventing him from getting it? How desperately does he want it? How important is it for him to get what he wants, or to avoid something happening to him? And then follow the course of his struggle until he succeeds in accomplishing whatever it is the problem set for him at the beginning. So every good picture, every good story, every joke begins with a question, with a problem, with someone or something that has difficulty. Again, to go to E.T., how does the picture start? With the hero being abandoned, left to his own resources on a strange planet, no way of getting home. And the whole picture was about how did he get home.
The instinct that you want to develop as a screenwriter is, what is your story? When does it really begin? What's the last possible moment that I can begin it at? That is, with the least wind-up and introduction and preface to the movie. When can I cut closest to the bone and start the story right there? Because the audience is impatient. The audience wants to be involved with your story, but they want to be involved. They don't want to hear a lot of preface about it. They want to get into the story already.
What's your approach to getting out of each scene?
I like to know the end of the scene, and I start with the end of the scene, as a matter of fact, often. If I know where the scene's going to end, then I'm all right. Then I can build to it. If I don't have an ending to the scene, then if I say, oh, in this scene we have to discover such and such, or we want to find out, or we want to push the story to such and such a point, that's all very well. But I want to know actually how the scene ends, a specific action. Getting out of a scene is difficult. I usually try to have what you call a curtain, something that will entertain the audience and make them look forward to the next scene. Usually with me, because I write much more dialogue than I do action. I'm practically an actionless writer. I'm very verbose. And I try a line of dialogue. For instance, in Reuben, he is by chance, he's in a communion, if you remember, and he's offered the wafer, and he says, no thanks, I'm on a diet. That was a perfect ending into the scene. On a more risque fashion, in Pete and Tilly, his wife has just given birth, and they're lying together on the bed in the hospital, and she's saying, no, it's wonderful. The doctor says it's just wonderful. Our son weighs 9 pounds and 21 inches long. And he says, if I've said it once, I've said it 1,000 times. You only get out of something what you put into it. And that, to me, is the end of a scene, because you're not going to get any further in that scene than that line.
Well, hello, Jim.
Well, hello, Hildy.
How are you?
Hi, Hildy. Welcome back. Hello, Hildy. How you been? Good.
Hi, Hildy. Oh, hello, Beatrice. How's advice for the love lawn?
Fine. My cat just had kittens again. Their own fault.
Hello, Hildy. Glad to see you back.
Glad to see you. Hi, Jim. Silver, you still around?
Oh, hello, all right. A little more around the chin, boys.
What do you want?
Your ex-wife is here. Do you want to see her?
Well, hello, Hildy.
John Doe's life. Well, it's perfect. I'll have Ned write it up. Oh, Ned, I got a story I want you to...
Wait a minute.
Words are loaded pistols.
Man, you came down here to shoot some life into this dying paper, didn't you? Well, the whole town's curious about John Doe, and boom, just like that, you're going to bury him. There's enough circulation in that man to start a shortage in the ink market.
In what, man?
John Doe.
What John Doe?
John Doe, the one I made up. Look, genius. Now, look. Suppose there was a John Doe and he walked into this office. What would you do?
The tyranny of words. Words versus images. The argument has raged on since the advent of sound. Each side makes some good points. But one thing is certain. People, both civilized and uncivilized, find it necessary to talk to each other now and then. For the screenwriter, it's the kind of talk they use that's important.
Now, then then comes the drama. He meets discouragement. He finds the world his feet of clay. His ideals crumble, so what does he do? He decides to commit suicide and protest against the state of civilization. He thinks of the river, but no, he has a better idea. The city hall. Why? Because he wants to attract attention. He wants to get a few things off his chest, and that's the only way he can get himself heard.
So?
So he writes me a letter, and I dig him up. He pours out his soul to me. And from now on, we quote, I protest by John Doe. He protests against all the evils in the world. The greed, the lust, the hate, the fear. All of man's inhumanity to man. Arguments will start. Should he commit suicide or should he not? People will write in pleading with him. But no, sir, John Doe will remain adamant. On Christmas Eve, hot or cold, he goes. See?
What's the relative emphasis you give to the image versus the dialogue when you write a motion picture?
The story dictates what weight you give. You could write a 100-page screenplay in which there was no dialogue, in which the story was perfectly clear, and it was all told through images. What we choose very often in the Western tradition of filmmaking is to have dialogue interspersed. That's how our lives very much are. It has a lot to do with people talking to each other. It doesn't make it less cinematic because we show life as it is. That is, that most of our communication is verbal. A lot of our communication is verbal. So it's not a more pure cinema. Sometimes it's written about that way.
In motion pictures, probably visual images are more important than in the theater. Certainly they are. And so there's a tendency to think that movies are a visual medium. They are. But to go to the extreme of that and say, therefore, they don't need words is ridiculous. The tyranny of words, I think, is the tyranny of bad words. Good dialogue is a very welcome thing. It probably exists less today than ever because it's so hard to write good dialogue.
I believe that dialogue in film belongs with the soundtrack and the music track, and that it's secondary, but icing, cherries on the cake, to the real storytelling, which was originated with the silent film, and I think we have gradually begun to get it back and take it away from the theater and television. That film is imagery. That you tell the story in images, in the screen conflict, in these two people or those two cars or that mountain that's going to be crossed. That's the image. The dialogue is something over and above it.
I'm a dialogue man. I will admit to excess. Purely visual pictures bore the hell out of me. And I know that because it's pictures, they must have visual aspect. Well, do you need a visual aspect in a Woody Allen picture? Sometimes he'll take a New York scene, he loves New York, he will pan up one of the landmark pictures, or he'll give you a shot of Central Park, and that's enough visual for him. It certainly is enough visual for me. I really don't look at pictures, I listen to them. Now, I'm not saying this is the right thing, but this is my personal aspect of it.
What's happened in American films is that the tang of the dialogue, I think, has been lost in the last 20 years. Back in the 30s, 40s, and a little bit in the 50s, there was a kind of real delight in dialogue and having the dialogue have snap to it, having a certain kind of style to the dialogue. And we went through a period in the late 50s and 60s where it went out of style, went out of fashion for dialogue to be stylish, to have snap, to be witty. It had a kind of naturalism about it that was very sort of undramatic, unlively, you know. And I think what's happening now is that now there's kind of openness to both things.
How does someone develop an ear for dialogue?
To make dialogue sound as though it is truthful, you have to study, you have to listen. You have to listen to language as a musician listens to music. Tune your ear into how people talk. Read plays, read screenplays. Very good way to learn how dialogue should be written is to read other writers' works. Read Doc Simon, read Neil Simon, read Paddy Chayefsky. People accused him of having a tape recorder and as concealed on it because he captured the sound of other people's voices so accurately. But if you read playwrights, contemporary playwrights, read Arthur Miller. If you read screenplays, read Preston Sturges, read Billy Wilder, read people who read the good screenplays. And you will see that not only brevity, but a certain quality of language is sounded by all of these men. And most of all, listen to the way the world talks around you. Open your ears to how people sound, to their abbreviations, to their bad grammar, to the unstructured use of the unstructured sentences, to interrupted thoughts. Listen, tune yourself in. Be aware. As an artist looks at scenery, at color, at shape, you listen to sound. Listen to the way people talk.
The best way to develop an ear for dialogue is to pick two parents with the right genes. I honestly don't think writing of dialogue can be taught. I think that's something, it's in the genes, something you're born with.
I walk along the street and I catch a snatch of what people are saying as they go by me. It fascinates me. So I would encourage people coming into the field of writing to listen to people. The best teacher of dialogue is what's going on in life.
And I came up with this notion, which is a very short scene, the two of them standing there, unable to talk, and they began talking about train schedules. And that's all they could talk about. And at the end of the scene, I guess the taxi came or whatever it was, and she left, and they had not talked. And it was terribly effective. And I think it's a simple one, very thing, but I think it's a very, very effective example of how the dialogue can be something totally, totally apart. And maybe should be, maybe when it's best. It's the way Kubrick uses music in counterpoint.
On the other hand, I like dialogue enough so that I'm not always looking to eliminate it. I think there are real pleasures in the way people talk. I think it tells us a lot about character. And it can give us those thrills that some of the most memorable moments that we have in film are lines of dialogue, the way people communicate with each other, the surprising thing they say.
Now, you listen to me. I don't want any plastics, I don't want any ground floors, and I don't want to get married ever to anyone. You understand that? I want to do what I want to do. And you're... George.
What's up? What's eating you? I am sitting here, Mr. Cook, trying to figure some way out of the blackest disaster that has ever struck down an innocent man since the days of Judas Iscariot. What are you mumbling about? What disaster? I am sitting here, Mr. Cook, toying with the idea of removing your heart and stuffing it like an olive.
Well, then you have no faith in the reforms that are being effected in Germany. I don't know, Mr. Wilson. I can't believe that people can be reformed except from within. The basic principles of equality and freedom never have, never will take root in Germany. The will to freedom has been voiced in every other tongue. All men are created equal, liberté, égalité, fraternité, but in German, there's Marx. Proletarians unite, you have nothing to lose but your chains. But Marx wasn't a German, Marx was a Jew.
But, my dear Charles, if we concede your argument, there is no solution.
Well, so once again, I differ.
Well, what is it, then?
Annihilation. Down to the last babe in arms.
Oh, Charles, I can't imagine you're advocating a Carthaginian peace.
Well, as an historian, I must remind you that the world hasn't had much trouble from Carthage in the past 2,000 years.
The writer is the Faust of modern society, the only surviving individualist in a mass age. To his orthodox contemporaries, he seems a semi-madman. The screenplay is more than a blueprint of a good picture. It's the very foundation. I'm Martin Ritt. I directed the feature films The Long Hot Summer, The Molly Maguires, and Conrack. I've read literally thousands of scripts, and I've developed a firm appreciation for a well-written screenplay. From the director's perspective, I agree with Akira Kurosawa. In order to understand motion pictures fully, one must be able to write a script. The talented director, of course, works a magic in making a powerful screenplay into a great motion picture by interpreting the story, by bringing out the best in the actors, and by imposing a strong visual style on the material. But first and foremost is the screenplay. Julius Epstein, writer of Casablanca, The Male Animal, and Arsenic and Old Lace. Nelson Gidding, writer of The Andromeda Strain, 9 Hours to Rama, and The Haunting. Faye Kanan, writer of Friendly Fire, Hustling, and Teacher's Pet. Lawrence Kasdan, writer of Body Heat, Silverado, and The Big Chill. Waldo Salt, writer of Coming Home, Serpico, and Midnight Cowboy. And Milton Sperling, writer of The Court Martial of Billy Mitchell, The Bramble Bush, and Battle of the Bulge. I'll be introducing the ideas of these 6 screenwriters who have made highly successful careers out of writing good scripts.
Shine or column, man.
Big rich slob like D.B. Norton buys a paper and 40 heads are chopped off.
Did you get it, too?
Yeah.
A work of art is not a matter of thinking beautiful thoughts or experiencing tender emotions, though those are its raw materials, but of intelligence, skill, taste, proportion, knowledge, discipline, and industry. Especially discipline.
Wait. Wants fireworks, huh? Okay.
Since all creative writing is a very personal matter, technique or methodology differs with each and every writer, and quite often from script to script.
Here.
A screenplay is a very long, very complex form of writing. How do you organize your ideas?
When I start writing, I don't know every situation. I used to, when I first started writing, construct very tightly. At the beginning, I wrote an outline that was very tightly constructed, and I tried to stay to it. And that outline, by the way, was for no one but me. I don't like submitting outlines to people. I don't really believe in that. I think the outline is the writer's tool, not the producer's tool, or not the, not a vessel for information to pass on to others. I think it's a writer's tool. So I do outlines for myself. But as the years have gone by, I have made my outlines looser. And I have been less worried about changing them, letting them float, letting them go, saying, well, I'm not going to go up that alley, which I had thought I would, because as I go along, this alley seems more productive. I'm going to go up this one, and that leads me to something I hadn't thought of at all, and I want to be free, feel free to embrace that.
My own personal method of writing does seem to vary a great deal. I think necessarily you vary from script to script and from form to form. If you're writing, I've been working on a long project about General Stilwell and the Chinese Revolution and so forth. I had to work on a card system just to get the history laid out on a big bulletin board that took up a whole wall, and begin to use that as a way of trimming away. And I hope that eventually we can come to a screenplay out of it. It becomes a whittling process down rather than a clay building up. I think you can start with clay building up. I think we did that in Coming Home, starting with a very simple idea, which there's debate on who had the idea first, of a woman whose husband goes overseas and she goes to a hospital and sees a paraplegic and falls in love with her, or gets involved. That was the idea. And building on top of that, as I mentioned earlier, was a matter of just constant interviews.
I love cards. I love index cards. Putting every scene on every card and numbering them in pencil so that I can erase the numbers whenever I need to, because I rearrange the sequence of scenes. Accumulating material at random and putting it on cards that's associated with the subject matter, of course, is a very good way to get the material in shape for the necessary task of writing scenes, writing out scenes, writing dialogue, creating characters, and so forth. To get the story down on separate pieces of separate index cards, and having perhaps 100 scenes to start with, or 150 scenes that one can choose from, and say this scene would go here and then this would go there, tacking them up on a big bulletin board, and being able to look at the whole array of potential work to be done. Then organizing those into a script continuity, into some straight continuity, and then taking it piece by piece. The prospect of writing an entire screenplay is appalling, but the idea of writing one scene from a collection of 100 other scenes, saying, well, it makes the job, seems to minimize the job, so that the point of attack becomes much less frightening.
I would used to start with a bunch of 3x5 cards on which I would write just all my ideas for the movie. It would be each getting its own card, maybe one line of dialogue that occurred to me, one joke, one way a character dresses, that he will wear a certain kind of hat, or that she will have a certain kind of propensity toward loud prints. It may be an idea for a scene. I know I want to bring two characters together. In Body Heat, I knew that I wanted the hero's best friends to confront him right after he had become involved with the villainess, and for him to begin to lie to his friends for the first time. That's all I knew. I didn't even know the story at that point, but I knew that I wanted the hero to begin to lie to his friends, and I had a card that said that, and I didn't know where it went yet. I accumulate a stack of these cards, which are really just idea cards, dialogue, scenes, little dynamics of the story, until I have a feeling in myself that I have enough of these cards. It may be 300 cards, it may be 100 on another project. It's usually quite a few. Then I start to create a second batch of cards, and those cards should probably be a larger card. Each card represents a scene. And then I begin to outline the story, and I know that literally what I'm going to write, first, second, third. It doesn't matter if I stick to it. If I later find that I don't need card number 26, that scene is no longer necessary because of something I did in 24, I can throw it out, just as you do later with film editing. That's what's beautiful about film editing. You just can constantly change the shape of the thing. And you can move things around. Same thing with these cards. As you're looking at it before you start to write, you can take card 26 and move it up so that it comes after card 18. And suddenly you can look, and it's almost like you're editing the film. You say, okay, now I see how the film goes. So I create these scene cards. And on these scene cards, I want to find a home for each of the idea cards. And say, well, yes, in this scene is where I will use this line. And in this scene here, I will use this joke. And so in a way, I'm like eliminating the idea card. I'm finding a home for each of them in a scene card.
My first draft I call the kitchen sink version, because I throw in everything I think of, including the kitchen sink. And I've had several first drafts of 300 pages for an Laurie movie, because everything is in it. But what I never read on Tuesday what I written on Monday. I never read on Wednesday what I've written on Tuesday. Once I've written, I never go back, reread it until I'm through with the entire first draft, even though it may be 300 pages, because then when I read it, it's like reading something absolutely new. And I say, did I write that? Or why did I write that? And what has to be cut usually becomes so obvious to me. And then I start the cutting process and the rewriting process. But I'm not afraid to throw everything into the first draft.
I always write my directions as interestingly as I can. I don't care that some directors say, well, I never read the directions. I just cross them all out and go on. I am going to write my directions as well as I know how. I'm going to put them in there, and I'm going to write my script so that you read it and you enjoy reading it, I hope. And I am going to put all my intentions in there. I'm not going to tell him, I'm not going to fill it full of close-up, unless once in a while I think a close-up camera stays on his face is very important. I'm not going to say trucking shot. I'm not going to put in a lot of technical phrases that I don't think are important. But I am going to, when I see a shot in my mind, because a good screenwriter sees the movie up there, sees the movie as well as hears it.
Before you write a script, how much do you know about your characters?
If I get so that I know that character very well, I can put him or her into any situation and feel confident that I know how they're going to react. So I believe in learning all you can. I write details for myself about them, and again, only for myself. I write a character sketch that is long and involved. You may never see a lot of it in the movie. You're not going to see how my character, ate his breakfast cereal. You're not going to see any of that. But I'm going to feel it. And hopefully when you see the movie, you're going to feel it.
How much and what types of research do you do when writing a screenplay?
Read a great deal about your subject, because you will get ideas from it. I'll give you an example from a picture that I just finished called Wheels of Terror, to be shot in Yugoslavia very, very shortly now. There was a dog in the picture, and the dog was just there. I didn't know why. It would pet the dog. What in the old days they call pet the dog. A character immediately becomes sympathetic if he pets the dog. Well, they had a dog in here, and these tough soldiers became enormously fond of the dog. But the dog was a dog. In my research, in reading about Germans on the Eastern Front and the Russians fighting the Germans, I saw a dog, a picture of a dead dog that was a mine dog. The Russians put anti-tank mines on the back of dogs, and the dogs were trained to run under the tank. Well, this ordinary dog in my script, who wasn't a particularly good character or personality, was discovered with an anti-tank mine on his back. They get the mine off these men with no danger, and get it diffused, and the dog becomes their pet. Well, now this is a very special dog.
So researching a subject is of enormous importance psychologically as well as realistically, because if you feel you know your subject well, and you have that many points of reference and that much information that you can fall back on, you don't feel that you're at a loss, that you're going to run dry, that you're going to run out of ideas, you're going to run out of scenes, you're going to run out of people.
Technique alone is never enough. You have to have passion. Technique alone is just an embroidered potholder. Personal attitudes regarding the humanistic, political, social, intellectual, and philosophic aspects of screenwriting, these are the very heart of the matter, those which require the most thorough kind of preparation. If you were just starting out, how would you prepare yourself personally, intellectually, and artistically for a career as a screenwriter?
I learned to write from reading literature, from Joseph Conrad, and from Ernest Hemingway, and from F. Scott Fitzgerald, and from Dostoevsky. And I studied English literature at the University of Michigan. Good writing comes from reading good writing. And it doesn't have to be screenwriting. It helps if you can get a hold of a good screenplay and see how it's laid out and how the guy constructed the thing to make it effective. That's all useful. The really important thing is to read good writing, think about good writing, analyze good movies, and then write, and more write. And if you continue to write, you might get lucky. You can only get lucky if you're on the road, and you're only on the road if you're continuing to do it. Not one screenplay, not two, not three, the fourth, fifth screenplay, and find out, then maybe you're learning how to do it, and then maybe lightning might strike, and then you might actually have someone pay for your writing. It's very difficult. It doesn't come quickly, and you have to have some strategy to live while that's happening. So you may have to take some other kind of job. It does no good if you're desperate to make money from this, because it's not something that happens quickly.
If I were starting as a screenwriter, which is what I've been most of my life, from the age of 20, I think I would take advantage of the thing that is present now, that wasn't present for any of us, which is to be able to study film, to be able to know the medium, to learn camera, to learn editing, to learn music, to learn acting. I do believe you should go out and learn how to act, take courses in acting, take courses in directing, take courses in camera. Learn all of your tools so that when you sit down with the paper, you're going to be able to write the scenes that can make for a wonderful movie.
Read, look, and then keep on writing, keep on writing, keep on writing. Expect to get rejections, learn from that. But you have to read and keep on writing all the time. I think I've said it before, when I first started out, when I broke away from ghostwriting, I wrote a 10 or 15-page original story every night for 9 months till one sold. And then I stayed 17 and a half years at Warner Brothers.
I think the best career preparation for writing is living and opening oneself up to life and living. I remember going to a dinner that was in the honor of an honorary dinner for Orson Welles about 5 years ago. And it was full of wonderful people in our industry getting up and telling Orson, who was sitting at the table, about what he meant to them. And one after another, people got up and said, you know, it was great love and flattering him. Your movies, I've seen all of your movies. They taught me all I know. They changed they gave me the inspiration to do this, and they influenced me. And he sat, you know, that great figure at the head of the table very graciously and listened and listened. And finally, at the end of the evening, it was his chance to get up. And I'll never forget it. He got up and he thanked everyone for the wonderful statements and flattery. But he said, my own recommendation, I like that you said you've all seen my movies, but I would say that we should all stop looking at so many movies and look at life.
Have you ever put a personal philosophy in your films?
I believe that if you're going to be a good writer, that you have to be yourself, that you have to take responsibility for your own actions, that you have to look to the future in the sense that you take pride in what you have done for the future, for your own kids, for your own country, for the world, for humanity. I don't think that you can write well unless you're informed by that, unless you have the compassion to be worried about hunger, to be worried about pain, to be worried about sickness, to be worried about oppression, to be worried about unfairness, because those are all the best stories. Those really are the stories. They make for the most violent, powerful material.
My philosophy of film writing, filmmaking, film viewing can be summed up in very few words, or one word: entertainment. However, one person, what is entertainment to one person cannot be entertainment to another. To me, violence on the screen, people from another planet on the screen, the sex troubles of high school students is not entertainment to me. My idea of entertainment is taking, maybe it's due to my age, mature people, intelligent people, sophisticated people. I don't care if they're cynical or self-serving, and what happens to them and their thoughts. And you see, most of my recent pictures have those people in them and about their stories. Outside of Cross of Iron, my name is on it, but I have 6 words in it. Outside of the violence and that, I think there was one gunshot. Maybe I've done 75 pictures, one gunshot in 75 pictures, let's say. And that was in Casablanca, where I couldn't get out of it. I could have him punch him to death.
A writer's personal philosophy is something that created a storm in the motion picture industry in the 40s and 50s, when writers were accused of putting their personal political philosophy, inserting their political ideology into films. Writers were blacklisted and driven from the business because they were accused of trying to subvert the Constitution of the United States. Of course, any writer capable of inserting a line of dialogue or an idea in a film and getting it past the producer, past the studio head, past the Johnson or Hayes office, the censors of that time, would have to be a magician. There was no possible way for a writer to go directly from whatever his philosophy was to an audience, nor is there one today.
I remember Shop One Angel. I was maybe guided a little bit by Joe Mankiewicz, but it was a film that had a very, very strong, very powerful anti-war message. Maybe more than I even knew. But it was what made the picture good. It was what made the picture exciting. It was what made the character of Jimmy Stewart come through and be something that he picked up and developed in his own characters later on. It was an aspect of what was going on in the world in 1937 when I wrote it, which was our fear of going into war. I was afraid of going to war. Everyone was afraid of going to war. We were about to go into... It's interesting that in the 70s I did Day of the Locust, which was written in that period about the same philosophic, basic thing, that the imminence of fascism, the disillusionment, the bitterness of a unfulfilled promise to middle class falling apart, breaking down the world. I think as writers, we must look to the sources of violence, the inequities, the cruelties, the evil passions, and I think there are evil passions abroad in the world that need to be taken on. I think that's up to us. I think film is uniquely and wonderfully capable of doing it.
Hey, Hildy, tell me. Please tell me the truth.
Oh, wait.
If you ever loved me, Hildy.
Now, look here, my good man.
You shut up, Bern.
So how can I do anything?
You're doing all this to her. I know that. She wanted to get away from you and everything you stand for, but you're too smart. You caught her and changed her mind.
Take Hitler and stick him on the funny page.
Now, let me ask you, you're going to give up everything for a man like him?
No, I am not. But first, can't you see that something's happened? Wait, I'll tell you everything.
Tell him. You tell him nothing. He's a spy, you fool. I'm not a spy. Come on, Hildy. You're coming with me right now.
Give me just a second. Can't you do this? This is the biggest thing in my life. Jeff, may I get you another
I wish I could remember what Emerson says about crime. Oh, there's Rankin. He may know. Sorry to be late. I'm fine. Hello, everybody.
Charlie?
Oh, hello there, Rankin.
How are you, Mr. Wilson?
Do you know the quotation?
Emerson? Quotation?
Commit a crime and the earth is made of glass?
No, I don't.
Commit a crime and the earth is made of glass. Commit a crime. Commit a crime, and it seems as if a coat of snow fell on the ground, such as reveals in the woods the track of every partridge and fox and squirrel and mole. You cannot recall the spoken word. You cannot wipe out the foot track. You cannot draw up the ladder so as to leave no inlet or clue.
Read, read, read. Read everything. Trash, classics, good and bad, and see how they do it. Just like a carpenter who works as an apprentice and studies the master. Read. You'll absorb it, then write. If it's good, you'll find out. If it's not, throw it out the window.